Hey everybody, Dana Shoaf, editor of Civil War Times Magazine, and I'm back with Melissa Lynn, director of photography behind the camera. We have moved about 3 miles east of the Bristow Station battlefield along the Bristow Road. I believe it's Route 619, which is a colonial road, as I was just told, an old road. And we are standing at another Prince William County Park site. This is the Brentsville Courthouse complex. I'm standing in front of a marvelously restored courthouse, and you're going to also see a jail, and there's a church over here. And these also played a role during the Civil War. And I'd like, first of all, to point out this is a really cool location close to the battlefield, and if you come, you should come see it. And now I'd like to introduce someone new. Come on in here, Paige. This is Paige Backus, everybody, and Paige is the site manager here at the Brentsville Courthouse complex. So can you tell us a little bit about kind of maybe starting down there's a chapel and sort of a general history of this complex?
Sure, yes. Here at Brentsville Courthouse, this is Prince William County's 4th county seat. So where the center of government was, where all of the action happened, recreationally, socially, politically, here in the 19th century. And so, starting with a building that's not necessarily Civil War related, as Dana pointed out, we have our 1874 Union Church that was actually built here when this was a rural town for the residents here of the town. But here in the main complex, we have 3 historic buildings that are specifically related to the Civil War history. We have the courthouse behind me and the jail that were both built and completed in 1822. And then the white building here to our right, which is now a 1928 schoolhouse, is actually where the clerk's office would have stood. And this will actually come into play when we talk about the Civil War history. But when this complex opened in 1822, this was, like I said, the center of Prince William County. This is where people came to conduct their business. This is where, when people were arrested, they were put in the jail to await trial. This is where people came to pay their taxes, to have all of their important paperwork, deeds, marriage records, things like that filed away. And this is also where people came for markets, socialization, just the general center here of the county, which would come into play over the course of the Civil War in its early years in 1861.
So it's a very important building to the community. It's sort of a community focus.
Right.
So, and the Civil War is hard on Brentsville. And interestingly, I just learned when we got here that Eppa Hutton, Confederate general, lived here in Brentsville.
He did, yep. Eppa Hutton was actually the Commonwealth attorney here for Prince William prior to the Civil War. He actually lived just down the street in a house that unfortunately no longer stands today. But it's here in this building that Prince William County residents voted for secession, and he was actually Prince William County's representative down in Richmond for the Virginia vote.
Okay, and then Joseph Latimer, if you are interested in the Battle of Gettysburg, Benner's Knoll, you may have been to Benner's Knoll and heard the story of the boy Major. Latimer's artillery battalion is placed on that knoll, and he's mortally wounded. And he was from Brentsville.
He was, actually, yes. There's a marker that denotes his story about 3 miles away from here down Old Church Road at the drive where his home once stood.
And then there's a John Brown raid connection here. Dangerfield Newby, who was one of John Brown's raiders at Harper's Ferry, his wife was here in Brentsville.
Yes, his wife was enslaved here in Brentsville by a man named Dr. Lewis Jennings, and on Dangerfield's person, after his death, there was actually a letter that was written from his wife Harriet from Brentsville that talks about how she wanted him to purchase her freedom, and you can find that letter online.
That's amazing. So, you know, the war was hard on Brentsville. There's accounts, you know, troops passed back and forth through here a lot, and how ruined the place looks, including the courthouse gets ruined, right? And you can kind of see some evidence on here where part of it was torn down for soldiers' huts.
Right, exactly. All the way from 1861, all the way through 1864, you had troops from both the Union and the Confederate armories passing back and forth here through Bristow Road. You had soldiers who were actually encamped here in the Brentsville area, including Hampton's Legion that was here in 1861. But over the course of these years, You also had soldiers who would actually take the bricks from where the clerk's office stood. They completely dismantled that building.
So that was a brick building there.
It was a brick building that used to be the clerk's office, completely dismantled, and then they started working here on the courthouse as well, but they weren't able to fully dismantle this building.
But they got a lot of it.
They got a decent amount of it, and then we are also now known as a burn county, which means that some of our public records, things that would have been in the clerk's office, some were stolen, some were destroyed, and some were even vandalized. If you go to the clerk's office today, you can actually see those original records that have Civil War graffiti and messages and notes on them from Union soldiers.
Union soldiers took some of those souvenirs, right?
They did.
The county records and everything.
They did.
Yeah. And then the jail was in operation during the war, though, right?
The jail was in operation during the war. We actually have records of a few Civil War soldiers who were actually imprisoned in the jail. Every time you had a different army coming through, when the Confederate Army came through and they got a few Union stragglers, they actually put them in the jail and vice versa. So we have a few records of soldiers from both sides staying in the jail for brief periods of time.
Incarcerated. And how long did these buildings remain functioning as their intended purpose?
So these buildings were actually in use as the county seat until 1893. After the end of the Civil War, you had here the town of Brentsville was for the most part widely destroyed, and so a lot of people, they started moving towards the Manassas Junction and started rebuilding there near the railroad tracks. And so in 1893 it was decided to move the courthouse from here in Brentsville to Manassas, where business was booming and it was a lot easier to access than it is here.
And when did Prince William County acquire these properties?
So we got these properties in 2005, and so we were able to restore these properties and open both the courthouse and the jail by 2007.
Okay, and you're currently open, correct?
We are.
Open?
We are. We actually are open for tours. Right now we're open on Mondays and by special appointment, but when we hit May and when we hit warmer weather, we'll actually be open Fridays through Mondays for tours from 11 to 4.
And I gotta say, the restoration here is really good. We got a quick walkthrough of the jail, and it's going to have a grand opening in May, is when
we are. Yeah,
and it's really, really well done. Really well done. And we're going to go. Paige and Melissa are going to go in the courthouse for a second to show you inside, because it's been restored to its 1820s appearance, which is fantastic. It looks great. Before we do that, though, Rob and Kevin and Paige were telling me that during the Bristow Station campaign, this was a park area for a lot of the Army of Potomac's wagon train was parked in this area. And I've got an account I just wanted to read you. This is by John Nevin, who was a major in the 93rd Pennsylvania of the 6th Corps, and he kind of came through here and saw it, and he writes, "At Bristow Station, we saw pretty much the entire wagon train of the Army. The open country for miles around was almost literally parked full with wagons. 2 huge parks of commissary wagons were evidently arranged to be burned if they could not be got away. For most of the other parks, the trains were beginning to project into the space toward Washington, looking for all the world like so many white-jointed snakes, slowly pushing forward their heads from their massive coils." So these wagon trains are starting to move out toward Washington, and he talks about how frustrating it is to march behind these wagon trains that he had a large portion of the Army of the Potomac had to do because they move so slowly. And he writes, "We marched 5 miles in 8 hours, mostly because they're behind the wagon trains." And he leaves this other anecdote. "Yesterday we marched abreast of a wagon train. I saw a wagoner drop his whip. He stopped his wagon, jumped off and got it, and then moved on. I saw that momentary stoppage travel back along a long line behind like a wave on the sea or a shake in the clothesline and clear to the end of the train." So this wagoner drops his whip, stops his wagon, and that stoppage goes all the way down the wagon train, and that's one of the reasons they're moving so slowly. Now, that's not good for places like this, because slow-moving soldiers get bored and they wander off and take things and vandalize and mess things up like that. So that's part of the reason this area was so hard hit. No actual fighting takes place here, but armies are back and forth on this road. Vast amounts of wagons are parked here, uprooting and changing this community. I'm going to step out of the way, and Paige, if you want to carefully lead Melissa inside there, and I think we got enough reception, right? And you can do a quick walk around inside the courthouse.
You want to just watch your step. And so coming in here into the courthouse, one of my favorite things about this building is that as a public building, this was a place where people were meant to be heard. So I'm even just talking with my regular voice right now, and you'll be able to hear just how much it echoes and how much it just enhances my voice in here. And so, as I was saying outside, you had a lot of different manners of county business that were taking place here inside this building. This is where people came to pay their taxes. This is where people came to settle civil and criminal cases. This is also where people came to auction items, to transfer property, things of that nature. And so back along the wall, you'll see here just how a courthouse like this would have typically been set up in the 19th century, because the courts operated a little bit differently than they do today. In most cases, it was not the judge and jury like we're used to, but instead the courts were presided over by magistrates, who were people who were elected from the community to both rule over and judge cases here inside Prince William County. And so you have, not only you have jailers, you have the sheriffs who are operating out of this building. This is the building that the clerk is operating out of as well, keeping records of everything that's going on here in this building. And so it's a building with immense history. Like I said, it was used as this courthouse until 1893. And then it became an academy, it became office space, it became a community center. And so we brought it back here and we restored the building back to its 1820s appearance. So we're really able to use this space and really get people involved in learning about all of the different aspects and all of the different roles that took place here in this courthouse, which would have to be another video in itself, which we're going to run out of time for me to explain all of that. And so you got to see a little sneak peek of this building. Let's head on back outside.
Cool. Have a neat tour?
Yeah, it's neat. It's really nice in there.
It's really, I love pre-Civil War architecture and houses and stuff, and I'm not schooled in it, but the restoration here is really nice and really well done, and some really good details have gone into these buildings. So, Rob and Kevin, come on back in here. And Paige, you can come in here too. We'll space it out here. You know, I just want to thank everybody here because this will be our last broadcast for today, and we've really had a great time. So, you know, don't overlook the Bristol Station Battlefield section of Prince William County. You can make a nice afternoon out of it. Check out two battlefields just down the road, and then come here and see this really interesting Brentsville Courthouse complex that also has really strong civil connections. It's really cool. Before we go, I want to mention that Rob is an author of a guidebook on the Bristol Station campaign. What's the name of the book?
A Want of Vigilance. I wrote it with my co-author Gibbons-Backus.
Oh, A Want of Vigilance, co-authored with Gibbons-Backus, who is
our curator here.
And I believe it's related in some way to Paige.
Paige is the better half.
Yeah. There's a connection there. I deduced that. What other books are out there really on the Bristol campaign? There's not like...
Well, a new book, Jeff Hunt, a good friend of ours, has got a book out right now. Actually, a 4-volume series he's working on. Volume 2 of that is specifically about Bristol Station.
Okay. So there is some literature, certainly not like some other battles, though.
Right.
But, you know, Want of Vigilance, if you want to follow this around and learn the history, Rob and Bill Backus have put this volume together. Now, Kevin is site manager at the battlefield, but you also have a lot of involvement with Antietam, right? You're a licensed guide there, aren't you?
Yes.
So, frequently give tours there, and
Yeah, when I can make it up that way. Yeah.
okay.
Yep.
You live down here now, but
Yes.
you still have a connection there.
Yeah, still go up there. Yep.
And do a lot of that. And you've got a book out, or don't you?
Yeah, Rob and I co-authored a book on the Maryland campaign, actually, and a couple other ones. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Excellent.
Yep.
Paige, I don't mean you to drift off.
Come on in.
I didn't want you to feel like you're yeah. Paige, Melissa, and I are all wearing our LL Bean boots, or variants thereof. It's pretty muddy today, so these guys are not in the club.
No,
But we
we missed
are.
out, I guess.
We are. They missed out. But they have their matching hats, which I can't wear. So.
We've covered that.
So everybody want to say hi here on our last broadcast?
Jeff Smith is on. He said, nice job today.
you, Jeff.
Thanks, folks. Gene Seiler is on.
Hey, Gene.
Tracy Barrows from Sterling, Virginia.
Nice.
Mark Fleetwood, a former Bristow resident,
Mark
is
Fleetwood
on.
is also a former co-worker of mine. Hey, good to hear from you, Mark.
Oh, that's nice. Thomas Hassel, Bob Savage, Shrita Bitterkoffer, hello. Jeremy Brenneman, Chris Davis,
Great.
Dave McMell from Wisconsin.
This is from Wisconsin. Well, so is Paige.
Awesome! On Wisconsin.
Wait a minute. We also learned that some of the courthouse books were stolen by Wisconsin troops.
Yeah, we did.
Right?
Yes,
Okay.
we did.
Still in Wisconsin.
Okay.
So,
I'm sure they're being well loved,
So
okay?
the yin and the yang in Wisconsin here.
No, that is true.
Well, thank you, everybody. We've had really strong viewership today.
Yeah, we have.
So appreciated. And after our initial, it's sort of calmed down. The weather, the wind dropped, the rain has gone away. So, and this is certainly worth it to bring you these great sites. So, to get a different perspective than you may have, get away from some of the major battlefields, come down and check out the Bristow Station battlefield. It's very interesting. A lot of interesting sites there. And then come down here and visit the Brentsville Courthouse complex. Really cool complex that's still intact. Until next month on our first Monday's broadcast, this is Dana Shoaf and Melissa Wynn, along with Rob Orison, Kevin Pollack, and Paige Backus for the Prince William County Parks and Rec Department, signing off from the Brentsville Courthouse complex.